Hello, nice to see you on my channel, Hearts and Shadows. Enjoy watching.
My name is Vincent. When the person you thought had your back turns out to be hiding a knife, your whole sense of reality gets flipped on its head. My fiancée had told me that night that she was going out with her friends. I didn't know that while I was waiting for her at home, she was somewhere else entirely, with another man. And I wouldn't have found out at all if not for a slip-up from her friend, which changed everything. By the time Kimberly walked through the door a couple of hours later, she had no idea what I knew and what was waiting for her. I first saw Kimberly at a business summit. I wasn't really looking for anything romantic that day, but when I spoke to her, she was confident and composed. She carried herself like someone who knew who she was and didn't need to say much to prove it. I couldn't tell you how long we spoke, but I remember thinking, I hope this isn't the last time I see her. And before the event wrapped up, I made sure it wouldn't be. I asked if we could exchange contacts. She didn't hesitate. From there, things moved smoothly. Our conversations turned into hours without either of us realizing it. And I started to notice something rare. She didn't just match my energy, she matched my ambition. We were both driven, both passionate about building something with our lives, both chasing something bigger than comfort. That created a bond early on. It was clear I wasn't just drawn to her because she was beautiful. But the more I bonded with her, the more it became clear. Kimberly was always a little cautious whenever I brought up anything that hinted at her past, especially in those early days. I had casually asked her if she was in a relationship. I just figured it was a fair question, considering we were starting to spend time together. But she danced around it. Didn't say yes. Didn't say no. Just gave this vague kind of answer that left me more confused than clear. Then one evening, after a while, we were out having drinks, and we got talking, getting deeper into things. That was when she told me she'd been in a situationship. Said it was over now. I asked her to tell me more. Like, what exactly was this situationship? Was it someone serious? How long did it go on? But the way she moved the conversation away was smooth. She didn't shut me down outright, but she'd pivot, ask me something about myself, and change the subject. She'd dodge it without making it obvious she was dodging. And I let it go. Because honestly, at that point, I thought her opening up about being single was enough. It felt like a green light. So I didn't press. I think that's where it really began. I overlooked what I should have paid closer attention to. Her being vague wasn't new. It was consistent. But I was already getting pulled in. So I moved forward. Not long after that conversation, we started dating. And in those first few months, everything felt right. I can say that without hesitation. Kimberly supported me in a way I hadn't experienced before. She actually cared about what I was working on. She'd listen, give thoughtful feedback, and connect me with people she knew who could help me out professionally. And I did the same for her. If I had a contact she could benefit from, I made the introduction. We helped each other grow. There was no ego in it. It felt like a real partnership. Within the first year, we were fully in each other's lives. I'd met her family, she'd met mine. Our friends started becoming mutual friends. We weren't just dating, we were integrating. To anyone on the outside looking in, we were solid. And honestly, I thought so too. But all that perfection and forward momentum made it easier to forget the things she never answered. The past she never really spoke about. I wasn't blind to that, but I told myself it didn't matter anymore. Because she was here with me. By the time our third anniversary rolled around, it felt like our romance was drying up. I started to notice how much of our conversations were about work. Emails, deadlines, meetings, performance reviews. We used to talk about traveling, starting a family someday, or even just silly, everyday stuff. But now it felt like we were two professionals who just happened to be dating. And maybe that's what scared me the most. We weren't fighting, and we weren't unhappy on the surface, but the spark that used to pull us toward each other was dimming. I know life does get busy, but deep down, I miss how we used to be. The silence between us was getting louder, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I knew I wanted something lasting and something stable. I was ready to talk about the future, but I had no idea where Kimberly stood. She always said she loved me, but words alone didn't feel like enough anymore. So, I invited her over for the weekend. She agreed right away, with no hesitation. She showed up that Friday evening with her usual big smile, a bag slung over her shoulder, and a bottle of wine in hand. We cooked dinner together, just like we used to. And over the meal, she vented about her job. I listened carefully, nodding along. I'd heard most of it before, but I didn't interrupt. I wanted her to feel heard. Later that night, we got into bed, and I looked over at her, lying beside me with her phone in her hand, scrolling. And I just asked, "Do you still feel the same way about us? About me?" I just needed to hear her tell me how she felt. She looked up from her screen immediately, almost surprised by the question. Then she smiled, leaned in, kissed my cheek, and said, "Of course I do, baby. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. No one compares to you." She called me all the nicknames she used to like. She'd been saving them up just for that moment. It caught me off guard in the best way. I felt the tension in my chest ease, like I'd been holding my breath for months, and finally exhaled. For the first time in a while, I believed her. I believed we were okay. I held her close, and I fell asleep thinking maybe we were just going through a rough patch. People do. But we'd made it through. I'd made up my mind that night. I was going to propose to Kimberly. I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. The timing felt right. So, the next day, I reached out to a few of her closest friends. I told them I planned to propose that evening and asked if they'd help make it special. They were thrilled. They immediately began coordinating where they'd be, what time to arrive, and how to make sure Kimberly didn't suspect anything. I told them to keep it quiet because I wanted this to be a total surprise for her. That evening, I took Kimberly to her favorite restaurant in town. She loved the place, the lighting, the atmosphere, and the way they plated the food. I'd made sure to tell her earlier in the day that we were going somewhere nice and that she should dress up a bit, which wasn't out of the ordinary for us. She wore this soft blue dress I hadn't seen before. She looked stunning. All night, I played it cool. We talked about random things. I kept glancing at my watch, trying to time everything perfectly without making it obvious. After dinner, I walked her out toward a small garden path right next to the restaurant, quiet, lit just enough by the nearby lamps. Her friends were waiting just around the corner. I gave them the signal. When she saw them stepping out from behind the hedges, holding up their phones with wide grins on their faces, she turned to me, confused and surprised. I was already on one knee by the time she looked back at me. I pulled out the ring. My heart was pounding, but I said what I needed to say, that I loved her, that I wanted to spend forever with her, that this moment felt right. Her hands flew to her mouth, and she just started crying. She said yes through tears and kept nodding, saying it was the best day of her life. Her friends clapped, cheered, and took photos and videos from every angle. It really felt like the start of the next chapter, the one where everything falls into place. In the days that followed, we had to make real-life adjustments. Our work schedules were chaotic. I worked long hours in tech, and Kimberly was always in and out of meetings as a marketing exec. We both agreed that trying to plan a wedding from separate apartments wasn't going to work. So, she moved in with me. It felt like the natural next step, and honestly, I was excited. I liked waking up next to her. After moving in, our bond seemed stronger. We talked more, shared more space, and argued a little over little things. I believed, deeply, that we were on the right track. After a few weeks of being together, I started noticing patterns that hadn't been there before. Kimberly would come home later and later, always with the same tired excuse about work. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But I had my doubts and decided to ask her something one night, just as she was kicking her heels off by the door. She admitted that sometimes she stayed out after work with her friends. No harm meant, she said. She just needed to unwind. And she apologized for not telling me sooner. I'll admit, I took her word for it. I figured the move, the stress of the wedding, and our tight schedules were just making things messy. So I let it go. I didn't press. I chose to trust the woman I was going to marry. Because what else are you supposed to do when you're months away from saying, "I do"? But something else started to unsettle me, her dynamic with her best friend. Kimberly began venting about her more often, saying things like, "She's jealous," or "She never supports me unless it benefits her." One night, Kimberly was pacing in our living room, practically yelling about how her best friend was causing drama about the bridesmaid dress. I listened. I didn't take sides. But after the third or fourth rant, I gently suggested, if she's really that toxic, maybe it's time to step back from that friendship. Kimberly paused for a second, just long enough for me to feel that something about my suggestion hit a nerve, and then she waved it off, changed the subject, said I was reading too much into it. I didn't push it. I just made a mental note. Even with all the tension, they stayed close. Talked almost daily. Something didn't add up, but I kept brushing it off. I told myself I didn't need to understand every part of their relationship, that sometimes women just argue like that and move on. About a month before the wedding, when almost everything had been settled, the last thing I expected was to be blindsided. One regular weekday evening. I got home from work, dropped my keys in the bowl by the door, loosened my tie, and noticed the silence. Kimberly wasn't home yet. That didn't worry me at first. A few minutes later, I got a text from her. Hey babe, phone's about to die. I'm meeting up with some friends. I'll be back a bit late. I didn't read anything into it. It actually felt considerate. I appreciated that she let me know, so I didn't think much of it. I warmed up some food, settled down to eat, and figured she'd be back later. Maybe an hour passed, and I remembered there was something about the wedding seating arrangement I wanted to confirm with her. But I figured she might be with her best friend, so I called. The friend picked up, but her tone immediately gave something away. She sounded hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she should even be speaking to me. I asked simply, "Is Kimberly still with you?" The pause that followed was too long. Then she said quietly, "She left a while ago with her ex." I wasn't sure I heard that right. Her what? She left with her ex, her best friend repeated, more firmly this time. I know I shouldn't be telling you this, but you really need to know. She's not over him. I couldn't explain how I was feeling inside. I was disoriented, but asked her to explain. She said Kimberly had been keeping in touch with her ex, that there were times they still spoke, sometimes met up, that Kimberly tried to keep it hidden, but it was clear there was still something there. I asked her why she was telling me all this now, and the friend said something I didn't expect, because you're a good guy, and you deserve to know. I'm tired of pretending I don't see what's going on. She said she had proof, that she had caught something on video a while ago when they were together. I didn't even know what I was agreeing to when I told her, send it. But a few minutes later, it hit my phone. A short video. Grainy, unsteady, but clear enough. Kimberly, my fiancé, laughing with a man I immediately recognized from a picture she once showed me. Her ex. I can't tell you how long I stared at that screen. The call with her best friend had been short, but every word hit hard. She told me Kimberly brought her along to this meeting just in case I called, so she could answer and make it sound like a harmless girl's night out. That detail alone made my stomach turn. It wasn't just a lie, it was planned ahead. I wanted to believe the friend had good intentions, that she told me out of guilt or a sense of decency. But Kimberly had always painted her as jealous, always said, she hates when I'm happy, or she's never liked you. So part of me questioned everything. Was this about protecting me? Or was it just a chance to finally sabotage her? But it didn't matter. That video shut down every doubt. You can't unsee what's right in front of you. It didn't need context. Kimberly was still emotionally tied to this man, enough to lie and go behind my back. I sat in silence, phone in hand, waiting, because I knew she'd be walking through that door eventually. And when she did, I wasn't going to yell or throw things. I was going to look her in the eye and let her explain herself with no room left to lie. I watched the clock on the wall as it ticked closer to midnight. Kimberly walked through the front door at exactly 11:07 p.m. She had her usual bright smile plastered on, the one she always wore when she was trying to act like everything was normal. But I wasn't in the mood for pretending. I called her over to the living room, kept my voice calm, and asked her where she had been. She said she was with some friends, planning parts of the wedding. Her voice was smooth, practiced, like she had rehearsed it on the way home. I nodded and asked her who exactly she was with. That's when her face changed. Her eyes darted for just a second before she asked, "Why are you asking me that?" She didn't answer the question. She just tossed one back at me, like she was trying to flip the script. She folded her arms and said I was acting paranoid. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move. I just looked her dead in the eye and asked her if her ex was part of the so-called planning group. That was when her defensiveness really kicked in. She stopped looking puzzled and started looking cornered. Her tone got sharp. She demanded to know what I was getting at as she raised her voice and asked if I didn't trust her anymore. I didn't argue. I reached for my phone, opened the message her best friend had sent me, and played the video. I watched her face as she watched herself and her ex. I watched the color drain out of her cheeks like someone had pulled a plug. There were no more excuses or deflections. That silence said more than anything she could have explained. I asked her straight up how long she had been seeing her ex behind my back. Why go to his house, of all places, when we were less than 4 weeks from standing at the altar? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she broke down crying, scrambling to shift the blame. She started ranting about how her best friend had always been jealous of her, how she wanted to ruin everything. She had been trying to get between us for years. But she still didn't deny what was in the video. Not once did she say, "It's not what it looks like." Not once did she deny being there. And that told me everything I needed to know. The house felt quiet after the shouting stopped. Kimberly was still crying as I told her the wedding was off. I told her she had to leave the house or I'd be forced to call the police. Her face crumpled. She started crying harder, dropping to her knees, begging me to listen. She kept repeating the same lines, that it was a mistake, that she didn't have anything serious with him, that she just wanted closure. She said she loved me, that she chose me, that it didn't mean anything. But I wasn't moved. I told her straight, if you love someone, you don't lie to them. You don't go behind their back for a night with your ex, and then come home acting like everything's normal. Closure doesn't happen in secrecy. I asked her if the roles were reversed. If I had spent the night with my ex behind your back, would you still be standing here defending me? She had no answer, just more tears. Right before she walked out, she muttered that this was all her best friend's fault, and she would never forgive her. I laughed. That was her takeaway? That the problem was someone telling the truth, not the betrayal itself? I told her plainly, your friend didn't destroy us, Kimberly. You did. With your choices. With your lies. She stood there for a second, like she still expected me to fold. When I didn't, she packed up her things and left. I spent the entire next morning on the phone, going down the list, canceling everything. Each call stung a little, not because I regretted it, but because I kept thinking about how close I came to tying myself to someone who clearly didn't respect me. My parents were stunned when I told them the wedding was off. My mom asked if I was okay. I told her I would be. I wasn't okay in that moment, but I knew I would be. Eventually. Later that evening, Kimberly's best friend called me, acting like she was suddenly worried about my well-being. I didn't even listen to most of it. I just replied once, "Don't ever contact me again. You and Kimberly are the same. I want nothing to do with either of you." Then I blocked her. I wasn't interested in apologies or explanations, not from someone who sat back and watched this unfold without stepping in earlier. Whatever guilt she had, she could carry it alone. As I reflected on everything, it hit me how absurd it all was. Kimberly had a man ready to marry her, build a life with her, and she still felt the need to cling to her past like it was some lifeline. What was she chasing? Some thrill? Closure? It didn't make sense. And honestly, the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't need it to. Her actions said enough. She wasn't confused. She was selfish. It was all one big mess I was lucky to step out of before I signed my name on a marriage certificate. It hurt, I won't lie. But more than anything, I felt a weird kind of peace. Like I just narrowly missed a car crash. I kept imagining what life would have looked like if I hadn't found out. A marriage built on secrets, lies, and late-night hangouts with the ex. No thanks.